In the year 1918, as the world emerged from the trenches of the First World War, a new and unexpected threat loomed: the Spanish flu pandemic. This terrifying disease, which claimed the lives of tens of millions of people worldwide in just 2 years, became one of the most tragic events of the 20th century. At a time when humanity was just beginning to understand the nature of viruses, doctors, scientists, and public health officials faced an unprecedented challenge. In this episode, we will take a closer look at those who fought on the front lines of medicine against the pandemic, often remaining in the shadows of history. The Spanish flu pandemic, which swept across the world between 1918 and 1919, was one of the deadliest events in human history. It is estimated that the virus infected about 1/3 of the global population, approximately 500 million people, of which between 50 million and 100 million died. Interestingly, unlike many other pandemics, the Spanish flu primarily affected young, healthy adults, which puzzled the doctors and scientists of that time. The pandemic spread in 3 waves, each more deadly than the last. The first wave, which appeared in the spring of 1918, was relatively mild, with symptoms resembling typical seasonal flu. However, it was the second wave, which erupted in the fall of that same year, that proved exceptionally lethal, causing a dramatic increase in the death toll. In the United States, one of the key public health advisors was Dr. William Henry Welch, a prominent pathologist and microbiologist, and co-founder of the prestigious Johns Hopkins School of Medicine. Although his work was not directly related to the Spanish flu, his experience and knowledge were invaluable in developing strategies to combat a pandemic of unprecedented scale and ferocity. At the same time, Dr. Victor Vaughan, a member of the Advisory Committee on Infectious Diseases of the National Defense Council, also played a crucial role in understanding the mortality caused by the Spanish flu, particularly in military camps. Vaughan, who was the dean of the University of Michigan Medical School, studied why the virus was so deadly, especially among young soldiers who appeared to be healthy. His research was vital in understanding how the virus spread in confined and challenging conditions, such as those in military camps. A significant aspect of the pandemic was secondary bacterial infections, which often led to the death of patients already weakened by the virus. Dr. Oswald T. Avery, later known for his groundbreaking research on DNA, focused on studying the bacteria Streptococcus pneumoniae during the pandemic. These bacteria were responsible for severe complications like pneumonia. His work provided valuable insights into the role of bacteria in increasing mortality among patients infected with the flu virus. While doctors and scientists did their best to understand the virus's nature and develop effective treatment methods, the U.S. Public Health Service played a key role in coordinating efforts at the national level. Under the leadership of Dr. Rupert Blue, the institution was responsible for disseminating information about preventive measures, such as quarantine, closing schools and public places, and promoting personal hygiene in times when effective diagnostic tools and medications were practically unavailable. These actions were crucial in limiting the spread of the virus. Despite intense efforts, research on the flu was hindered by mistaken beliefs about its causes. Dr. Richard Pfeiffer, a German bacteriologist, was the first to isolate the bacterium Haemophilus influenzae, initially mistakenly thought to be the cause of the Spanish flu. Although his hypothesis proved incorrect, His research was significant in understanding the bacterial complications associated with the flu. It was not until later that studies revealed that the pandemic was caused by the influenza virus, H1N1, and bacteria only exacerbated its lethality through secondary infections. The discovery of the true nature of the virus that caused the pandemic became possible many years later, thanks to the work of Dr. Johan Hultin, a Swedish-American pathologist. In the 1950s, Hultin discovered tissue samples from Spanish flu victims buried in permafrost in Alaska. Thanks to these samples, scientists were able to reconstruct the virus's genome and study its structure more closely, leading to a better understanding of the mechanisms that made it so deadly. It was determined that the virus had avian origins, and wartime conditions, such as crowded trenches and lack of hygiene, facilitated its mutation and rapid spread, contributing to a global health catastrophe. The Spanish flu pandemic also had a profound effect on society worldwide. In many places, medical personnel were in short supply, and hospitals were overcrowded. Cities imposed quarantines and public places were closed, further exacerbating the sense of panic and uncertainty. In some communities, such as Native American tribes, the virus devastated entire populations, which were particularly vulnerable to new infectious diseases. The loss of life was so immense that in some regions, the number of deaths exceeded the capacity for burial, leading to mass graves. One must also remember the contribution of Ludwig Hirschfeld, a Polish microbiologist who studied immune mechanisms during the pandemic, contributing to a deeper understanding of immune responses to viral infections. Hirschfeld, working in challenging wartime conditions, conducted research on blood groups and their impact on resistance to infectious diseases, which had a long-lasting impact on the development of immunology. The Spanish flu pandemic is not only a story of disease and death, but also a history of scientific errors that delayed the discovery of the true nature of the virus for many years. Dr. Richard Pfeiffer, although a respected microbiologist, incorrectly identified the bacteria Haemophilus influenzae, which he discovered as the cause of the pandemic. This mistake was eventually corrected thanks to groundbreaking research by Dr. Johan Hultin and the analysis of samples taken from permafrost, highlighting the importance of constantly questioning scientific conclusions and relentlessly pursuing the truth. The rapid spread of the pandemic was due to many factors. Most notably, the Spanish flu broke out towards the end of World War I, when millions of soldiers were returning home, which contributed significantly to the global transmission of the virus. Poor sanitary conditions, overcrowding, and mass migrations further accelerated the spread of the disease. The lack of advanced treatments and the ability to only treat symptoms increased the death toll. Fear and uncertainty gripped societies around the world. Daily life changed dramatically. Quarantines were imposed, schools and public places were closed, and gatherings were banned. The economy practically came to a standstill, and social life nearly vanished. Art from that period, full of fear and mourning, became a reflection of the collective trauma and helplessness. The lack of modern diagnostic tools and the rapid spread of the virus made many containment measures insufficient. In cities like Philadelphia, restrictions were introduced too late, leading to a sharp increase in cases and deaths. This showed the importance of a swift response and better preparation for future health crises. To this day, one of the biggest questions remains why the Spanish flu particularly affected young, healthy adults, a group usually less vulnerable to severe forms of influenza. It is believed that this might have been caused by a so-called cytokine storm, an excessive immune response in which the immune system not only fights the virus, but also attacks healthy tissues in the body. Since young adults generally have stronger immune systems, they were more prone to this overreaction, which may explain why this age group was so severely affected. The Spanish flu pandemic was a global event that reached nearly every corner of the world. While today we often focus on the United States, it is worth remembering that other countries also took measures to slow the spread of the virus. In Spain, where the pandemic was widely reported in the media, authorities quickly closed public places and restricted movement. Although the name Spanish flu suggests the virus originated in Spain, in reality the country was not the source. Spain, being a neutral country during World War I, was not subject to wartime censorship, allowing the media to report freely on the epidemic, leading to the mistaken association of the virus with Spain. In India, the pandemic claimed millions of lives, and poor sanitary conditions and lack of access to healthcare worsened the crisis. The flu became not only a health emergency, but also a social and economic disaster. The Spanish flu pandemic also played a crucial role in shaping modern health policy. It became clear how important it is to monitor infectious diseases on a global scale, which eventually led to the creation of international health organizations, such as the World Health Organization. In 1948, many countries began investing in healthcare systems to better prepare for future epidemics. The situation in Poland was equally dire. The country just regaining its independence was struggling not only with the Spanish flu, but also with epidemics of typhus and tuberculosis. The lack of proper sanitary conditions, doctors, and medicines worsened the situation. Despite these difficulties, Ludwig Hirschfeld conducted pioneering research on immunity, which had a lasting impact on the development of immunology. But that is a topic for another episode. The Spanish flu pandemic was one of the most tragic events in human history. Even though more than a century has passed since those events, their impact is still felt today. The actions taken by doctors, scientists, and public health institutions not only helped to limit the number of victims of this pandemic, but also laid the foundation for the development of modern medicine. It was during this time that the importance of rapid response to health threats was understood, as well as the crucial role of international cooperation in combating global epidemics. Although many of those who fought on the medical front lines are now forgotten, their legacy endures in better preparedness for pandemics, in developed healthcare systems, and in a deeper understanding of the nature of infectious diseases. If you found this exploration of the Spanish flu pandemic insightful, please like, comment, and subscribe. Your support helps us bring more in-depth historical content like this. Join us as we uncover more stories that shaped our world only on World in Depth.